fun of my age, but he's the one that's thin on top and has a gray beard. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate the prayers. Always good to be prayed for. Certainly need more prayers. Keep it going. Thank you, Adam. Adam, in high school, played football, basketball, and baseball as well at very high levels. Went on to Harvard and played football out there. Was part of their undefeated 04 10-0 team, led by a guy if you watch Thursday Night Football, you might know him better as the Beard, Ryan Fitzpatrick. That was Adam's quarterback. And intramural basketball teammate, right? Okay. And now lives in South Korea, Seoul, South Korea, with his wife and 3 kids. They're here over the holidays to visit. Really, really special at this time up that he was able to be here. So thanks a lot for that. RJ, thanks for the invite. I appreciate that. Very excited to be here, very humbled to be here. I looked through the booklet. I see the people that have spoken to you before, the great sports figures, the very eloquent speakers. And apparently the list has run dry, and that's why I'm here. I want to thank the Luncheon Club, all of you. This was my brother Tim's favorite place. He loved coming to the Luncheon Club and would drag me along every time I was in town. And now I'm a member. So I guess it worked, right? But you guys took good care of him. This was a safe place for him the last couple of years when his memory was going. You guys would remind him of things that you knew he couldn't think of himself, especially Danny Brooks and Ernie Schott, good friends forever and ever, and 3 guys that really took care of my big brother. Ted Neininger, Jim Linda Smith, Doug Miller, thank you guys. Thanks for taking care of my big brother. You can tell I miss him. I did play baseball at South for Tim, and Tim was a Ohio High School Baseball Coaches Hall of Famer. I also played basketball at Canton South for Red Ash. Yeah, you're all laughing. He was Ohio High School Basketball Coaches Hall of Famer. Then I went to Bowling Green and played for Don Nealon, Canton Lincoln fame, right? He's a college football Coaches Hall of Famer. Get the idea? Then in the pros, I was with Bart Starr from Green Bay, Marv Levy from Kansas City, Tom Flores from the Raiders, all 3 pro football Hall of Famers. And a guy that I would put in the same category, but just didn't happen to win a Super Bowl, so he'll never be in the Hall of Fame, Sam Rutigliano. What a great coach he was. I was very, very lucky to be around some really, really high-level coaches and try to learn from them, use a lot of that stuff when I was coaching, whether it was at Bowling Green or on the sandlots with the kids. I learned a lot from those guys. But by far, the most interesting of any of those was Red Ash. How many have a Red Ash story? Oh, yeah. And you can't tell them in front of women or children, can you? You know, people that meet me and find out that I played for Red Ash say, how could you play for that guy? Well, if you're an opponent, you disliked him. Many of you hated him. But if you were in his locker room, you would do anything he asked you to do. I got to qualify that. Red never asked anybody anything. We would do what he told us to do. And we loved him. But he wasn't the only crazy coach around the area at that time. You're way ahead of me, aren't you? How about Freddie Harrell at Tipton, kicking the crap out of the bleachers? How about Larry Wilson at Fairless and then Perry running up and down the sideline? Everybody says Red was crazy. They didn't see that guy. How about Nick Vroxas at Massillon? That dude scared me. He was scary. Just standing there. I'm not sure he was mad. I think it was just his look. And I would throw Ken Newland from Lincoln then, later McKinley, in with those guys. He wasn't as animated or maybe as loud, but he worked those officials just as hard. Speaking of referees, for years, I saw Red go to war with whoever was officiating his games. Referees like Ralph Miller, Art Sorelli, Tubby Sturgo, Chet DiStefano, Henry Armstead. And then Claude Palmier, my high school English teacher. How am I doing on the grammar side? So far, so good. He told me something that I had trouble believing. Red was friends with those guys. I mean, Red would give it to him and they'd give it right back to him. And years later, after Claude told me that, I guess, yeah, I did see a certain amount of respect. They would go to war kind of like brothers and then make up and even afterwards go out together. Claude knew Red as well as anybody, spent all summer painting with him, right? Yeah. They'd go out for a drink or 2 or 4 or 10 or... Red was a big guy, he could hold his liquor. But I know he demanded respect out of his players for the referees. We weren't allowed to talk to the referees. And if they asked us a question, we had to respond yes or no, Mr. Referee. I am not kidding you. And that was not a negotiable. Then I went on to BG. Bowling Green in the 70s, in the early and mid 70s, could have been called Canton College because Don Nealon was the coach and a guy named Ron Chismar, remember him coaching at McKinley? He recruited this area. And in 1974, my first year up there were 16 Stark County players on our roster. 4 of our starting 5 offensive linemen were from Stark County. I felt at home. I knew half those guys. Guys like Gene Jones from St. Thomas, Bruce Knoll from Louisville, Don Taylor from Oakwood, Glenn Barton from Canton South, Greg Musey from Central. Lincoln, we had Dave Flory and Tony Vendetti, loose kid. At McKinley, we had David Turner, best athlete I've ever been around. David Turner. Scariest athlete, too. He was on defense. I didn't want to see him much. The O'Bravik, 3 brothers, Nick, George, Mike. And then Massillon, always had to have some Tigers, right? Dave Kulik, Rob Steffen, Art Thompson, Steve Studer. The next year, we got Brad Baker from Hoover, Doug Weiner from Central, and Joe Studer, Steve's younger brother from Massillon. Steve was my center my freshman and sophomore year. Joe, my center my junior and senior year. For 4 straight years, I had my hands on a Studer butt. And they were very muscular butts. They were great players. When I coached at BG, I immediately came back to recruit Stark County. We got from Massillon, Eric White, 2-time league player of the year. Dwayne Crenshaw, Mark Friedley, Ron Viscount, Stark County player of the year from Lake. Sean Zimmerman from Hoover, Rick Howard from Canton South. And still today, Stark County is really good to Bowling Green. Our best player on defense, even though he missed the last part of the season with a knee injury, Dorian Pringle from Massillon. And we don't have to talk a whole lot for you to know that Harold Fannin went to BG. Now he's setting records as a tight end with the Cleveland Browns. And hopefully they'll win someday. In 2018, we moved back to my hometown. And my hometown radio station, WHBC, gave me a chance to call games. High school football games. What a ball. Man, I'm with a great crew. You heard from one of them a while back. Dan Belford's our play-by-play guy. Denny Kincaid does stats. Kenny Rota's on the sideline. Frank Stallone pitches in whenever we need him, usually in the playoffs when Kenny Rota won't go down on the sideline because it's too cold. Right? Hey, how about the game at Zanesville this year? We go down to New Massillon and Big Walnut. We get word that we're going to be on top of the press box. Not the top row of the press box, on top of the press box. It rained the whole game and it was like 35 degrees, right? That was miserable. But we got it done. And it'll be a fond memory, you know, now that we didn't die of pneumonia. But the really cool thing for me about doing games with WHBC is as we travel around to all the schools, almost all of the stadiums are in the same location as they were when I played. They look drastically different, right? They're all turf, no grass, brighter lights, bigger stands. But as I'm driving up to that school, the stadium is in the same place, and I get that feeling that I'm in that Canton local school bus getting ready to play high school football on Friday night. There's only a few that are not that way. Fairless moved out into VAR, right there down by the high school. Glen Oak was Oakwood and Glenwood when I played. We were all on 44th Street at Glenwood High School. And then St. Thomas, they got Serpilla Stadium now. They were at Central Catholic back in the day. But other than those three, the same spot. And so when I go, I try to remember just the good things. But WHBC's been doing it for 80 plus years. And I really, really look forward to that in the fall. I'm so proud of Stark County football. Best coaches anywhere. I think the kids play as hard as anywhere else. Certainly there are pockets. We're from Western Ohio, where Adam grew up, and there's a small school league out there called the Midwest Athletic Conference. They're the Coldwaters, Marion local, St. Henry's that come here every year and win Division 6 and 7. That's great football, great coaches, but nothing like Stark County for the big and mid-major schools. And the Hall of Fame right now is running an exhibit called Stark County Proud, where they highlight the 5 Hall of Famers from Stark County. Can you think of them? Can you name them? Alan Page, Lenny Dawson, Dan Deerdorf, Mary Motley, Paul Brown. See, you guys are good. Adam, I told you they knew sports. I told him, you're going to be with some guys that know sports. And then he went and made fun of your age. Working at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is the greatest retirement job ever for a football junkie. There are a lot of my coworkers here. Raise your hand if you work at the Hall of Fame. I know a bunch of them over here, right? What do we do when there's not much to do? We talk football. It's great, right? During COVID, there wasn't a lot going on. So I wandered around. And I spent a lot of time in the bus room, and I realized I played with or against several of those guys. And so I started counting them up. Of the 382, this is up to current time, not back in COVID. Of the 382 current Hall of Famers, about to increase by, we hope 8, right? Not 4 again. I played with or against 98 of them. That's 25.7%. Isn't that amazing? I was only in the league 3 years. I did bounce around a lot, okay? So that's part of it. But I think that's really, really cool. That's a lot of fun. Now, that's going to diminish because my guys are all on the old-timers list now. But there's a fellow there that works in the theater named Harry Rotundo. Harry's a McKinley guy, and we love to talk Stark County sports, not just football, everything. And I'll walk up to him and he'll say, name the 5 best point guards ever in Stark County. And we'll banter it back and forth, and I'll say, name the best quarterback in Stark County history. And, we'll banter it back and forth. So I want you to put your thinking caps on here a little bit, because I'm going to throw a couple of categories out that we like to talk about. Because this kind of ebbs and flows. Everybody's got their own opinions. And so just yourself, think about the greatest multi-sport players in the history of Stark County. Now, by multi-sport, I'm not talking about 2. Back in the day, we played more than 2. Played 3, many of them played 4, multi-sport, 3 or more sports. Think it through your head. I'm going to throw some names out, see if you agree or if you got better ones. Dick Snyder from North Canton. That's pretty good. Yeah. Ronnie Young from Canton South. I saw him up front and personal. He played 4 sports, and he could have done anything he wanted to do. Nick Roman from McKinley, another 4-sporter. Todd Blackledge from North Canton. His 4th sport is announcing. Boy, ain't he good. Whew. I'd love to listen to him. I wish he'd replace Tony Romo with the NFL. Bob Gladio from Louisville. Ooh. I had no idea he was so good in basketball and baseball. And, a guy that's still just killing it with the Tigers right now, Dylan Dingler, right? Football and basketball, or football and baseball, player of the year, basketball and baseball state champ. Man, he did it all. There are a lot of others out there. Joe Sparman and, Thurman and so many. Tell me what? Don Nealon was a 3-sport star. That's right. I think of him as coach, but Long before that, this skinny little dude was a good athlete. All right, here's another category. You ready? Stark County families of sports royalty. Families, multi-generational, include the cousins. You guys probably know better than I do. I did a little bit of research. Here's ones we kept, Grimsley. How about the Logans? Dick, Jeff, Judd, Andy, Drew, still playing down in Cincinnati. I think about the Pilatas. Nick, Todd, Jake, Jared, even Lauren was an all-league basketball player in high school. My brother played with Nick at Walsh, and if heredity had anything to do with it, none of those made their mark on defense. It was all offense. The Fox, Wayne, Lynn, Arnie, coaching too. Foxes, Tim, Darren, Dustin. I heard somebody say in the back, the coons. Now, man, you talk about a tree, that thing's got a lot of branches, right? A lot of coons all over the place. And then the Blackledges again. Ron, Todd, Owen, Kyle Nicholas, a grandson, pitcher with the Pirates. Hayden Junker, one of his cousins, played at Kent State. So that's the kind of stuff we talk about. How can that not be fun? And I would love to take a survey of this crew to see what you could come up with. You got a lot more than I just named. I have a big gap of not knowing what was going on in Stark County when I lived away. I went away to college, didn't come back till 2018. Now, we visited a lot, but I missed out on a lot of the players that played in those eras. Here's another thing that we talk about. They run the Hall of Fame speeches on a loop. Not all of them, they kind of move them around. I hope that when we redo the hall, they have it so that we could go up to a kiosk and hit any of the Hall of Fame speeches and listen to them. They don't have that right now, you kind of snippets. But Harry and I were saying, what do you think is the best Hall of Fame speech ever? Ooh, man, there's been some good ones. There's been some really bad ones too. You know, I mean, those guys made the Hall of Fame for, you know, what they do on the field, not that they can put together a speech. And I don't know why, this is a pet peeve. I don't know why, when somebody gets elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame for being a football player, they have to talk to us like they're a great world philosopher in their acceptance speech. You know? Come on, tell a couple of locker room stories. But the funniest, Dan Dierdorf has one of the funniest lines ever. Remember when Terry Bradshaw got inducted in the Hall of Fame, he talked about, if I could just take one more snap from Mike Webster's butt. Remember that one? And it was funny. Bradshaw's funny. Bradshaw's just funny to look at. Well, Dan got up a couple of years later and he said, remember when Terry said that? I'd like to just take one more snap. He said, I was a sinner. He said, I got to tell you, from my standpoint, that was no thrill to have that guy's hands up under your butt. He told a lot better than I did. Another great one is Jerry Kramer, the pulling guard for Vince Lombardi's power sweep right and left. He got up and he talked about, you know, everybody thinks the Packers won every game, but apparently they didn't. He said they were playing Denver. And they were having a tough time, and every time Denver would score, they'd take that white horse and they'd run it around the field. He said Denver scored so many points on the Packers that day, they almost killed that horse. The most touching speech, I'd put this up against anybody, and there are a lot of touching things that guys say about their families. Jim Kelly spoke about his son who was in a wheelchair right in front of the podium. Hunter was his name, and he had a disease that was fatal, and indeed passed away 2 years ago. How that guy held it together, looking in his son's eyes, that's touching. A lot of great speeches, a lot of great things in the Hall of Fame, and I get to hang out there and wander around there every day. Very, very lucky to be able to do that. Now, I've asked you a lot of questions, and I hope you might have some questions that I can answer. And if I can, I'll ask Adam, because as we all know, our sons know everything. He really does. I told you he went to Harvard, right? When did you take the ACT as a sophomore?
Sophomore.
What's a perfect score?
36.
Where'd you get? 34?
35.
Oh, 35. He got a 35 as a sophomore. 36 is perfect. I said, okay, when are you going to take it again and try to hit that 36? He said, nah. He says, I don't want him to think I'm a nerd. He's not a nerd. He comes home every 2 years and completely fixes all the technology stuff in my house. I appreciate that. All right, questions. Anybody got questions? Yes.
Are you in line for the Cleveland Browns head football coach?
Are you in line for the Cleveland Browns football coach? I think at this point, everybody's in line. And if you're a quarterback, you certainly got a shot at playing for the Browns because they'll get through everybody sooner or later. I was talking to Dick in the background, and you know, you kind of figured that Stefanski would get fired. 2-time coach of the year and all those injuries. And, you know, he dealt, you know, the hand with Deshaun and then the draft of Shador. And not a whole lot a coach can do about that. But, you know, the one guy that really needs to be fired, they can't fire.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
somebody had a scenario. They said that the Titans are for sale or might be for sale. He lives in Knoxville, and we're hoping that he would rather own the Titans and screw them up further than the Browns, and maybe we'll get a new owner. So I guess there's always hope, right? All right, Dennis, what you got?
Who is speaking of owners, who were the best owners of the franchise in the NFL over your 30-plus year career?
Green Bay, we didn't have an owner. They're owned by the public. So that was the best. I was in Kansas City with Lamar Hunt. You know, one of the greatest football sports figures ever in America. But even Lamar had a lot of control over what was going on. He had a rule. And Marv Levy was there. He fired Marv Levy, so he had some skeletons in his closet too, right? He had a rule that we never finished a game if we were losing and had timeouts left. Okay? Now, on the surface, you say, well, that's because he wanted to make sure that we did everything we could to win a game. Never wanted to give up. All right, that's admirable. But when you're losing 50-7, why are we taking timeouts with 10 seconds to go? You know? So I think the best owners are the ones that we don't know. You can't name them. You know? Who's the owner of Dallas Cowboys? Everybody knows, right? He's not a good owner, in my mind. I think the owners, and I found this even in college with the boosters, the richer they get, the smarter they think they become. If you made your money in real estate or oil or whatever, what makes you think you know football? Hire football people, let them do it. It's your business, you get the money, you get the title, but they do the work. If you're an owner, don't try to make decisions, don't draft, don't trade for Deshaun when the general manager and head coach are saying no, 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 no. Don't draft Shador when the general manager and head coach are doing this with their head, and then the camera goes on them, they go, I'm thrilled with that, that's awesome. You know, leave them alone, let them do their thing. So I don't know who the best owner is. It's probably somebody I've never heard of, and they just let the football people do the football stuff. That's a very opinionated answer, sorry.
All
Yes.
right, high school, college, and pro. Who laid the hardest hit on you?
Ooh. Well, you can see the way I'm built. So every hit was a hard hit. I would say the hardest I ever got hit was in Miami. There was a player back in the 70s named A.J. Dewey. A.J. played a lot of different positions, kind of a, you know, Swiss Army knife, could play the defensive line outside, they'd put him at linebacker. They basically moved him around because he was very difficult to block. And I was with the Chiefs, and we were down there, and this was kind of the game I was going to try to make the team on, and I made the fatal mistake, and don't let announcers on TV say to let you know that they read from sideline to sideline. Nobody does it. You read from inside out or outside in, and if you're going completely the other side, you're screwed. And I was. I was this way, and they weren't open, and I went like this, and AJ Dewey went like that, and I could only see through very long tunnels out of each eyeball, because all of this looked like Christmas decorations. And I got up, and the trainer was running onto the field. He thought I was dead. I wasn't dead. And back in those days, there was no concussion protocol. They said, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah." And I went back into the game. Knowing that I had no peripheral vision, you knew what I had to do. I had to get the ball out very quick, and I didn't care to who. And so that game didn't end well. But another hit that I remember was a rookie. We're playing the Steelers, who were, the best in those days. And I come up over center, and they were playing the 4-3, and so who's the middle linebacker? Lambert. Okay. Had the blonde hair sticking out his ear holes, and he's giving you that look like, I'd rather just eat you for lunch. And I get the ball, and I drop back, and of course he's blitzing. And I thought, I do not want to get hit by him. So I peeled out left, and there was Joe Green. I thought, I don't want to get hit by him either. So I turned back inside, and Lambert sacked me. And he gave the obligatory, "Welcome to the NFL, rookie." I would have liked to say, "Think of something original, you big idiot," but no, I wasn't going to say that. "Yes, sir, Mr. Lambert." Yes. Those are the ones I remember. I remember a big hit I avoided. Later on, we had a guy working with us at the Hall of Fame. Remember Akil Blunt, Mel's son? All right, Mel Blunt was a monster at cornerback. 6'4", 215. He played cornerback. Couldn't play today. A lot of the Hall of Fame is timing, right? Mel Blunt raped and pillaged every wide receiver he ever guarded in the NFL. They're not allowed to put their hands on him now. He would never have been able to play cornerback in the NFL today. But back in those days, he was awesome. And he was chasing me out of bounds one time, and I got out of bounds before he got there. And there's a picture of it, and I showed it to him. And he laughed. You can tell I had a lot of hard hits, right? But I only had 2 concussions. The one I told you about down in Miami, that was a concussion. And the other one was we were playing Baltimore back when Burt Jones was the quarterback. They were pretty good. We're playing at Old Memorial Stadium. And I got in at the end of the game like I usually did. And what I would do is either hand it off or run a bootleg or something like that. And I ran a bootleg for first down on 3rd and a couple, and like a dumbhead, I tried to run over a safety. I don't know why. And that was my other concussion. I don't remember until the bus. That was the next thing I remember. I don't remember the locker room. Don't remember if I took a shower. If I stunk, that's probably why I didn't. But talk about Sam. Sam would tell me, "Mark, there are a lot of old throwing quarterbacks in the NFL, but no old running quarterbacks in the NFL." My philosophy and my simple thinking was, why should I stand in the pocket and take a hit when I can run away from it and avoid the hit altogether? So he knew I was like a scrambler. But the only time he would put me into the game when it mattered was to run a quarterback draw or a naked bootleg. I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's how I get on the field and you want me to stop doing it? But I got it, he was right. I did scramble around too much. I was scared. I mean, I ran fast, but I was scared. What do you say? Yes, sir.
You may not want to comment on this, but what's happening with the Hall of Fame Village, and is there any input from the Hall of Fame to the Hall of Fame Village? I know it went private, but they need to straighten that thing out, in my opinion.
Oh, you don't like the look of the baggie up in the that is way, way over my retired part-time pay grade. I really don't know, other than what I read. I'm sure Jim Porter does. But I read that they are private now and that they're going to resume construction in 2026. That gives them a lot of days, but hopefully things will get cranky, right? Because as you might know, some people might confuse it with the village construction. The Hall of Fame is doing construction right now. Right behind, or just to the north of the end of our existing building, we're putting up a 600-person event center. It's going to be awesome. And the best thing that Jim Porter tells us every time he meets with us is it's already paid for, right? So it will happen. It will be done. When? Got a whole other year or something, don't we? Yeah, it's not going to be ready for the enshrinement this summer, but it's going to be awesome. It'll be cool. It'll fit right in with the village. And if they get that water park and hotel done, it'll be even cool. Adam and his kids were here 2 years ago. And we told them, the next time you come visit, we'll take you to the water park. So Titus, my grandson, says, hey, Papa, are we going to go to that water park? Not unless we go to Kalahari and Sandusky. So, yeah, I hope it gets done. Golly, that would be good. Yes?
Hey, Mark, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Coming out of high school, did any other colleges recruit you?
Yes. It was a lot different back then. You know, you were allowed 5 visits, and I was not a very good high school player, I didn't think, but I had good height. I could run pretty fast, especially when I was scared, and I could throw the ball a long way. So I started getting recruited, and I didn't know what level I should play at. So I visited schools at every level. In Division III, I visited Ohio Northern, that's where Tim went, and I visited Baldwin Wallace with one of my good buddies from high school. I visited Akron, Jim Dennison, they were Division I AA at the time, okay? I visited Bowling Green, which was Division I, but not, you know, Power 5 or whatever they want to call it. I had a visit with the Naval Academy that I chickened out and didn't visit because I didn't want to eat like this, you know, like they make the plebes do. I visited Ashland with Fred Martinelli. He was the coach there at the time. They were very good, Division II. So I tried to give myself options, and I was really not sure. But I went to Bowling Green because of Don. He was my brother's coach. My brother was his very first high school quarterback. My dad was the president of the Booster Club. So my family knew Don Nealon. I wanted to play for Don. I went to visit there. It just felt like home. You know, I could walk across campus, didn't have to take a bus or anything. I wasn't good enough to play in the Big Ten. Bob Cummings had just taken the Iowa job, and one of his recruiters came in and sat me down in the office, and he said, Mark, if you come to Iowa, our first 5 games are Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Southern Cal, and I don't know who else. By that time, he had lost me. And he said, what do you think? And I'm sitting there rolling around in my head, and it said, sounds like you're going to be 0-5. Did not want to go out there and have that happen. Iowa was terrible in those days. Bob, you know, brought them around a little bit, now they're really good. But yeah, so that was my recruiting experience. I'm very thankful to God that he pushed me in Bowling Green's direction. I met my wife there. All 3 of my boys were born there. I dearly love Bowling Green.
Do you have any opinion of Cleveland moving out to Brook Park or Kansas City?
Everybody's got an opinion on that one. From a pure standpoint of being a fan, I like the idea because I know what it's like now to get down on the lakefront and park and walk and get out of there after a game. So I like the idea of the traffic pattern. I like the idea of sitting there in December. I had tickets to the Steelers game. I would much rather sit in 72 degrees and watch that. So there's a lot of advantages to it. The other events that they're going to attract. Now that does bring me up to a point. And I know he spoke here several weeks ago, and I dearly love the guy, Jim Tressel. I love Jim Tressel. But I don't know what he has against Canton. When he was the head coach of the Buckeyes, he took the state playoffs from us, moved it to Columbus. Talking to the people that played in that cavernous stadium, the coaches hated it, the fans hated it, The players liked it because they said I played in the horseshoe. But nobody else liked it. They moved it back here. Now he's already promoting that they moved the state playoffs to the new dome in Cleveland. Come on, Jim. Give Canton a little love here. I'm okay with the stadium moving out there. You know, when Robert Kraft did what he did in New England, bought up all that wasteland, put up a village, you know, he gets all the parking, he gets all the rentals and leases from the stores and the museums and gas and restaurants and all that. That is all Robert Kraft. He doesn't care if he sells one more razor blade. That man has made it. And that's what all the owners want to do now. They want to get their own little village. And, you know, I guess gas prices going down is killing Haslam, so he wants to. Yeah. What's that?
I want to know what Adam does.
You know what? I want to know what Adam does too. Adam does a lot of stuff. Adam worked for a software company while he was in Boston, and his wife was also in corporate America. And they made a decision with 3 little ones in Boston that this isn't what they wanted to do the rest of their lives. So they quit their jobs and moved to Seoul, South Korea, initially to work in orphanages. They had a heart for orphanages, and they had the cultural background with his wife's extended family being Korean, and all 3 of my grandkids speak fluent Korean, so that's pretty cool. They went over there and COVID hit and they wouldn't let them in the orphanage, right? So they had to think of something else to do or come home, which we were voting very heavily for. But his wife has several degrees, and she started working in international school and got another degree and did some counseling and that kind of stuff. And Adam started a sports academy called Triple Threat. And as he tells it, he can tell the story a whole lot better, but I'll tell it shorter. People over there, the emphasis is on academics so strongly that they really need to exercise their kids. And if you see an American, which he is, he's white, okay, over there, they think that he knows everything there is about every sport because he's American. And so they would ask him to tutor or train their children, and he found out that there was a demand for that, and you can make some money doing it, and so he developed his Triple Threat Academy. Since then, they go on family mission trips into Mongolia, Philippines, they've been to Vietnam, Japan, China, all over the place. They go on mission trips to work with orphans, a lot, right? He, this morning, made me sign, they didn't make me. He has just developed a nonprofit 50C3, whatever those things are called, that he's going to provide financial aid to kids that cannot attend his camp so that they can still get the training. They started a school right now, 5 through 8, soon to expand into the high school. So he and his wife work and run this school, a Christian school. So Adam does a lot of stuff. And I still tell him I pray every night that you come back to America. But I have learned to appreciate very much where God has him and what God has him and his family doing in Korea. So I'm much more at peace with him now. That's the first he's heard that. Any other questions?
I got one.
Okay.
What was Brian Sipe like? And you still.
Brian Sipe. Brian's a good guy. You know, he was a surfer dude. He wasn't blonde, but he fit the mold, you know. He would skip out of high school and hit the waves. And so he shows up in Cleveland, Ohio, and he's still a surfer boy, you know. Quiet, reserved, humble.
You still in contact with him?
Yeah, not a lot. Brian will not do interviews. That's just not his thing. Really private guy. When we were in Cleveland, he lived in a place called Seville. Anybody know where Seville is? By Medina? Okay, there you go. In a log cabin. He had met the owner early in his career, and the owner would let him stay in that log cabin the whole fall. And so that's where he was. He'd stop on the way home, have a drink with the lineman, typically, and that was it. You wouldn't see him. He didn't do public speaking. He didn't do camps. He went back out west, became an architect of sorts, you know, more of a construction tech guy, building houses. Coached high school Christian academy out there to like 3 or 4 state championships. Coached quarterbacks at San Diego State for a while with Brady Hoke. Remember Brady, the head coach at Michigan for a while? So yeah, he's involved and still looks like he's 30 years younger than what he is. You know, always did. Brian and I got along very, very well. To say that he mentored me would not be true. I think he viewed me as competition. And that's fair. I like Brian. Good guy. Brian's a Christian guy now. Wasn't back then. That doesn't mean he was a bad guy back then. Just now he's a safe guy, right? Very good. Yeah, praise God for that. Yes, any others?
I got one. What do you think of Sam Giuliano as your coach? Was he a pretty good coach, you think, or?
I loved him. I love Sam. Sam was a great guy. Sam had a way of easing the tension no matter where we were at or what we were doing. I remember we lost a few in a row and he came in and he said, have you guys been watching TV, been reading the newspaper? And of course, everybody said no, and that was a lie because we did. And he said, well, according to the media, we got 1 foot in the grave and the other foot on the banana peel. And everybody laughed, and then we had a good meeting and went out and practiced hard. You know, he had a way of doing that. Sam turned 92 this last summer. Did I tell you that Don turned 90, Don Nealon, on January 1st? 90 years old, living in Morgantown, West Virginia. Me and some of my teammates are headed down to see him. Not doing great. He had a stroke not long ago. Recovered mostly, still sharp as a tack mentally. But yeah, Sam, I love Sam. Sam traded me to Green Bay though, so I didn't like him very well for that. You know, because some of you might think that was a good deal, but back in the day, the Browns were very competitive and the Packers were not. And so I went to Green Bay and, you know, then they win the division. That was the Red Right 88 year. We went back with the Packers, we went back to play the Browns mid-season. And the Packers were terrible, but we were playing great this day and the Browns weren't. And we scored, we went up by 5 or 6 points, you know, not more than a touchdown. And there's like 1:30 left to go. And my teammates with the Packers, they're all celebrating on the sideline. They say, woohoo, we won, we beat the Browns. I say, hey guys, not too fast. This is what they live for. And that's what the cardiac kids live for. And they took it right down the field and threw a touchdown. They all looked at me like, oh my gosh. I said, it happens to everybody, don't worry about it. That was every year, right? Gosh, they were so good. We got back from Green Bay because, of course, we didn't make the playoffs. And I went over to Cleveland to visit some of my buddies, Don Cockcroft, Johnny Evans, Cody Risen, Randy Rich, some of those guys. And they were getting ready for the game, and they all said, hey, you coming to the game? I said, heck no, too cold. I'd go home and watch it on my TV in my living room in front of the fireplace. And I cried right along with him when that ball, you know, that was really so out of character for Brian Sight. So out of character that he would throw that ball. You know, and you saw his head. As soon as it left his hand, he dropped his head. He knew that was, and you've seen the audio bites. Sam, the last thing he said is, if it's not open, what did he say? Throw it in Lake Erie. Threw it right to Mike Brown. All right, hey. Happy New Year. I love being here. I love being part of the Hall of Fame Luncheon Club.